The NPV analysis method was used to analyze our investors' options. In this method, inflation will not be taken into account, as the NPV actual rands is equal to the NPV of constant rands. Our first option was to rent an unfurnished apartment. Firstly, rates and taxes needed to be calculated. So it is assumed that the approximate rates and taxes were calculated per year according to the property valuation. In this calculation, the formula used to calculate the rands and taxes is the property valuation minus 200,000, which is an amount of residential properties that is excluded from rating, multiplied by the rand service tariff for the different property type. This data was taken from the Tshwane municipality budget, which led to the calculation of the following rates and taxes per year. The service tariffs were estimated using the average increase for years 2018 to 2021, as the Tshwane municipality budget was only up until 2021. The next thing to consider was the property valuation and how that came to be. So it was estimated that the property will increase in value by 5.7% over the next 5 years. The capital gains tax was calculated by using the PSG capital gains tax calculator found on the SARS website. Now, when looking at the actual actual rent and rental agent fees, the rental agent fees per year can be estimated at 8% of the tenant's rent per month. This does vary, however, between 5 and 12%, depending on the rental agent, the agency, and what they're willing to negotiate. The flooring, it was decided not to use laminated flooring, as the additional 800 rand that can be added does not make up for the initial 35,000 rand cost. The levies were calculated using the average inflation rate over the years, as there is no set or constant inflation or factor that leads to an increase in levies. The stove, I opted to choose the stove to replace the stove in the first year to avoid further damage and any complaints from the tenants. With the additional costs, the total financing needs came up to 22,000, which can be financed using a personal loan. The interest rates were between a minimum of 10 and maximum of 27.5%. In this calculation, I used the 27.5% to evaluate the worst case scenario. Using the revenue and the operating expenses, I then calculated the operating income, which is further used in the after-tax cash flow table, which I then used to calculate the net present value. The second option was to rent out a furnished apartment using short-term rentals. I assumed the minimum rental period was a week at a time, where there are 52 weeks in a year. Now, firstly, I found the occupancy rates, since in the hospitality industry, these types of things are seasonal and depend on the months and times of year. The tourism guide from South African Statistics could provide occupancy rates. I then used the average for each month and then created an average for the year and used that as the occupancy rate. It was found that the occupancy rate is 25 weeks in a year, or 0.485. When choosing to be a host, it is also important that you choose the right platform. The options were between Lekker Slaap and Airbnb. So firstly, I looked at the agent fees or commission, where Lekker Slaap required a 15% commission on every confirmed booking, and Airbnb required a 3% service fee per rental. Secondly, in order to create the rental rate, or the rate that will be charged for income, which is charged per week, I looked at the various accommodation that was close to the location or in the similar location and could sleep the same amount of people, which was 2 to 4, depending on what furniture was put in the house. Using this, I calculated the future income from Lekker Slaap and Airbnb for each year, and then proceeded to calculate the NPV. Lekker Slaap had the higher NPV and was thus chosen to be the hosting platform. The furnishing and interior decoration down payment was taken as the cost of the new furniture and fixtures that will be depreciated. The total expense financing needs came up to 72,000. These will be financed using the personal loan, from using a maximum interest that was also calculated using a maximum interest rate of 27.5%. The final option was to sell the property and invest. With this, it is assumed that our investor is a moderate investor who is willing to accept moderate risks. It was found that the transfer costs in a sale are paid by the buyer. As the seller, the costs incurred include only conveyancing fees, agent commission, and the costs of compliance certificates needed for the sale of the property. The cash flows in that first year were then analyzed in order to find out the amount that was available for investment. It is assumed that the same amount will be invested into each unit trust. Now, with the sale of the property, it was found that capital gains tax was not applicable. This was due to the fact that this was based on the assumption that it is her primary residence. The results were then put into the after-tax tables, where the NPV was calculated. Then it was found that the highest NPV was the option of selling the property and investing. Therefore, this would be my recommendation